What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel, talking today's four-game NBA slate, a little bit of a split slate, just 4 games to choose from. We got the usual crew. I'm back after missing the end of last week with a little cold, but feeling good now. So we got myself, DC, AP, Mangone. We got the RPS party coming up at the end of the week, and we got plenty to discuss, Mangone, even though it's just a 4-game slate. We got the return of late swap, perhaps, NBA DraftKings on Friday for those who haven't seen that. So we could go over that a little bit on this shorter slate. But how you doing? Been a few days since we've done a show together. How you doing on this Monday afternoon, Mangone?
Yeah, excited to be here breaking down the slate. Late swap, right? That's the conversation. I'm on the other end. Bring back FanDuel, drop the lowest score. Those were the days. I actually, and you think I'm saying it jokingly. I actually loved the old format on FanDuel, and I don't mind the late swap thing. I think the biggest thing I've decided with this is, hey, if you don't like late swap, then play DraftKings. If you like late swap, go play FanDuel, right? It's really that simple. Now that there's optionality is not a bad thing. So I'm kind of for that. I think I'll probably be playing more on FanDuel. We'll have to see. I want to see the direction DK goes. One thing I do like that DK is doing is I do like these $4 GBPs that we got tonight. This nice $4, 150 max. I mean, it's a fun one. I mean, it's one that people can MME and put 20 in if they want, or, you put 150. I just think it's like a really cool prize pool rather than the $15. And I think a lot of people agree on that. I'm hoping DK goes in that direction. So that's the biggest thing I've been noticing, at least recently.
Yeah, love the $4 contest. The only thing I wish the payout structure was a little bit flatter. I always prefer a flatter structure to the 100K to first, and then you get like the massive drop off to second. But I definitely love the low buy-in.
To be fair to see, FanDuel has an interesting one today. So I played the $3 on FanDuel. I put 100 in yesterday, and it was 10K to first, but it was 9,000 entries, I think. And like today, it's like 19,000 entries and it's like $3. So it's obviously the weekends, they kind of like have to cut it a little bit, but there's some flat ones out there if you look for it. Obviously, it's not as big, but I don't know. I'd rather the 100K go to a 50K and allocate it out like you said. I think it would be better if they did it in that way. I don't know how everyone else feels. Sounds like you're in the same agreement as me.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Go ahead.
What year did they switch to full late swap NBA? Because like Mangone, me and you, we love pulling receipts. We could easily pull Twitter receipts. Yeah. I know I probably bitched a few times too. I'll be honest, but like anytime when we didn't have late swap, like the one fear is the second you have something go wrong, a chalk player that gets like late scratched and there's no late swap, everyone's going to be bitching and crying on Twitter. Like that's how it was before. And now we just go back to it because, the argument is like this edge. And it's like, well, the only way to win an NBA DFS is to be by your computer all night. I would disagree with that to a little extent. Yes, there's definitely a built-in edge if you're able to, sit there, rerun everything every 30 minutes. There's definitely an edge. But I guess the argument is like, how big of an edge is? I mean, a couple percentage points. I don't know. I am again for just, and again, it's more so like because I got kids and we got activities every night, and so it gets tougher. So yeah, I'm for no late swap, but I don't know. I like my last thing is I like how they've broken up the slates. I think that's a really good solution. Have these like 1 to 2 hour max windows and get all the games, and just build it into 2 different slates. I really like that.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, DC, I wanted to say, AP, I think the big thing that I've at least noticed is because people are talking about, well, everyone's always had kids, right? But I think a lot of people who have kids that are complaining are the ones that have them between the age of like 5 and like 12, where it's like activities every night, like you said. At least that's what I've noticed. I know that's like it's a common theme with you. You don't complain about it. I know Tony complains about it a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's like the common theme I've noticed, at least, is like people who have kids. And a lot of people who started in this industry, they were younger when they did, right? More in like their 20s and stuff. And I don't know, some of these people now have kids and stuff, or had them at a young age. And I don't know. I think that's some of what you're seeing here as well with some of the people.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Like, when pricing was tight in NBA at the beginning of the year, it's like, well, we're still all playing with the same rules, the same player pool, and you just got to be able to adjust and, react to it the best you can. The truth of the matter, I don't think this is disputed. NBA late swap undoubtedly favors the people who are really grinding out the entire slate, right? Most of these people playing a lot of lineups with good projections, constantly refreshing them, getting the new guys in. And, if you're a good player, but not a professional or a semi-casual player, like, it will reduce the edge of the very best NBA DFS players. There's no question about that. I think there's an argument to be made to catering towards the masses and not the few, right? Like, I think you can make a good argument for that. So honestly, I'm okay with it either way, right? Like, there's some nights when I can grind it out all night, and those nights I'm more likely to play more lineups, play MME. If I got something going on, I don't have kids personally, but if I have something going on that night, it'll be a 1 or 3 or 5 lineup night where I can check it at dinner or whatever it may be. So,
DC, do we know if late swap, is it like officially back, or is this a test drive on Friday?
Yeah, so some people were asking about that. So all I know is that it is up for Friday's NBA slate. I'm sure they're testing it out, seeing what people are saying, and then they'll go from there. Which I also don't have a problem with that, right? I mean, you were talking about FanDuel dropping the lowest score. I mean, if it was up to me, we'd change the rules every slate, because I think there's an edge when the rules switch if you're kind of on top of how best to strategically attack a change in the rules. So, I mean, that's not something they're going to do, but like, I would be all in for like just the rules of the scoring system and stuff changing all the time. But obviously they want to have a consistent product. And I do think, Mangone, I think it would be a mistake for DraftKings to have some slate swap, some not. Like, I think they got to kind of go one or the other for their flagship kind of main tournaments, right? They can't just I think they got to pick a path.
I agree. You have to pick a path for sure. I mean, I have a lot of opinions on this. Like, for instance, like we're creatures of habit, right? We want to know what we're going to be getting all the time. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. So I think it's important to pick one or the other. And that's why I'm curious, like, because Saturday's not like, I feel like rolling it out on a Friday is a little bit weird. I feel like they should have rolled it out maybe on a Monday, but rolling it out on a Friday, I don't know. Because, like, what are they doing Saturday? Like, I assume we're all going to be like wondering, and I'm definitely wondering what on earth they're going to do Saturday. So
I think Friday is like a good day to do it, because it just, and I could be way wrong. Like, I don't like track this or anything like that, but it seems like volume is a little lesser. I would be curious to see if anyone had the data on this, because I don't, just going off feel, but I feel like the contest slightly smaller just by the eye test. And maybe it's just because Friday night people going out, they don't want to have to worry about late swaps. So I agree with the day, being Friday to test this out.
I think the reason Friday contests are lower, and I felt that way for like a lot of the main sports that are 7 days a week, is because golf money is locked up. So the algorithm on DK understands to build the prize pools partially for how much money is in everyone's accounts to understand, because obviously they don't want to make it too big where there's not enough money, where that's why Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday, or Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are normally a lot bigger, and you see the drop off on the Thursday and Friday. The counterpoint would be, yes, of course, an NFL Thursday showdown is going to have a huge prize pool, but that's an anomaly. I'm talking like the main consistent sports like baseball and all the other ones.
Here's why I don't think it will stick around for DraftKings. I mentioned late swap absolutely benefits people who are grinding real hard, benefits the pro players, but like plenty of players, we have a good audience on the show and plenty of members and all that stuff, but like still the vast majority of NBA DFS players, at least in kind of the flagship tournaments, aren't, they're not necessarily aware that late swap is beneficial to the winners What they will absolutely be aware of, though, is when a player in a later game gets scratched from their lineups and they have to take a 0, and people are going to complain. Like, it's just, if you have no late swap, there's just no way, even though it's better for those players, for the casual player, DraftKings is going to get so many complaints about this on Twitter, customer service, that I just think it will just be kind of overwhelming, and they kind of have to keep it around, I think.
I think the best way to do it, and it's not, I don't know how easy this is, and you probably have to hire someone to be on the back end with this, but like, it's just like once someone is ruled out, you need the ability to switch. The problem is, how quick is that? Like, if I get the news before you and I can't make a switch, that's a problem, right? It needs to just be like, it somehow has to be pushed through on DraftKings. Like, if someone's ruled out, now I can swap to the guy below me. I can't swap everything, but I can swap to some player below. Like, that would be a quick fix, but it's not easy. This was a really great conversation.
If they do get rid of it, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people taking the binaire route and still pretending that they need to be at their computer the entire night, and maybe just keep that a secret from
maybe like I need the late swap till 8 o'clock, and then they're just sitting there watching the games just so they can get an hour to just chill and watch the games.
Yeah, so sorry, honey. I got to work, man. There could be late news coming down the pipe here. All right, let's get into this 4-game NBA slate. I do think it's a pretty interesting, fun one overall for such a short slate. All 4 games do start at separate times. First one is at that early 7 p.m. Eastern time block. It's Toronto and Indiana. This game in Indy, and the Pacers favored by 6. As always with Pacer games, a very high total sitting at 245 or so. Questionable for the Pacers are Jalen Smith, and then Aaron Nesmith is out. Obviously, some changes to that team recently as well. Looks like Toronto should be pretty much healthy for this one. So, fun game to kick us off. I'll start with UAP, Toronto, and Indiana. What do you got for us?
Yeah, this is, there's like, I do think it's a really interesting 4-game slate. It's broken up too. Obviously, each game has a different start time, different lock time, if you want to look at it like that. In this first one, projects to be the best pace, the best back and forth, DFS type of environment. And you got narratives to go along with it too. Obviously Pascal Siakam facing his former team. Bruce Brown, I don't know if you can call like the Bruce Brown situation, like Denver would be one of the true ones. I mean, Bruce Brown has been like moved around to so many different teams now. So it's like revenge every night for that guy. But this game projects definitely to be one where you probably want to prioritize multiple pieces here. So starting with the Pacers side, Mathurin, he's been obviously starting for Aaron Nesmith. A few things that I've seen in this Rick Carlisle rotation, obviously I'm always hesitant to like start to say things about a Rick Carlisle rotation, because the second you do and you start to confirm, the rotation's tighter, the guys are getting more minutes, Rick Carlisle just like changes things up. It's what he does. But you have seen this rotation, at least over the past few games with Nesmith out, tighten up a little bit. Obviously coming off a really nice game yesterday against the Mavs. You saw that starting unit, especially in the first 3 quarters, really consume a lot of minutes. Like the key bench guys. So the starters were Mathurin, Halliburton, Nembhard, Siakam, and Turner. And the key bench guys were TJ McConnell, and then basically Obi Toppin, and then you get a little bit of Jalen Smith and Doug McDermott. But they're not playing that heavy of minutes. The game blew out, which is impressive to do against Luka and the Mavericks. Again, it's a Sunday. Weird things happen on Sundays. Who knows who's partying Saturday night and everything. We always see weird stuff happen. But if you just factor in, if this game wasn't a blowout, all 5 starters would have been pushing 34, 35 plus minutes. And so not something that you typically see from a Rick Carlisle team. So that's one. You like that. This Raptors team starting to get a little bit better. So when the trade happened and, the first thing that I saw with the Raptors was a hit defensively. We were attacking this team. They've actually been slightly better. And I believe they have back-to-back wins, over the Nets and Hawks. And they lost a tight one to the Pacers. This Pacers team back on 214. In that game, Pascal Siakam, or not Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes absolutely has like the Pacers number. Like it's like this dude puts up monster numbers against this team. I played him last time these two teams played, 58 DK points, absolutely nuked. The usage rate has been insane. You like the rotation as well. So it's somewhat predictable there. And the price, $8,900, it's a fair price tag. They get RJ Barrett back, so we don't have to mess around with Jordan Nwora. I know I locked Nwora on that slate. I just, Jordan Nwora, like, he had his moments throughout the season, and he got a spot start, which rarely never happens. And so I was just like, you know what? Maybe they give this guy full run. Nope. They pulled him very quickly in favor of obviously Bruce Brown, and Grady Dick got some good run, played really well. And then Kelly Olynyk too kind of filled some gaps. But really, like, the Raptors rotation is pretty nice too. Emmanuel Quickley, Gary Trent Jr., RJ Barrett back in the starting lineup. I'm working under the assumption that we're getting no minutes limit at all. And then Jakob Poeltl. So we have a lot to kind of unpack there. You got bigs against the Pacers, which is still a thing. I think Jakob Poeltl definitely in play. Scotty Barnes, my preferred play. I like the positional flexibility too, point guard, small forward. And then RJ Barrett's just kind of that glue piece. $7K, fair price tag, was good in this matchup as well. So I see a lot of options in this game. I'm going to have both sides of it, kind of mixing and matching. I guess I'll end with my one rule on this 4-game slate. I'm going to stick with the 3 max from any one team. And I think that I will look closely at it because, Miami's situation will be interesting when we get to that. And it's the late game too. We have no idea what the starters are going to look like. So I am toying around with the 3 max per team rule. I'm pretty confident that will stick. And so then it just becomes a mixing and matching from both sides here.
Yeah, I was going to say the one problem I had with your entire field there was 3 max on Miami. I think might be a little bit restrictive given what they have left. But we'll get to that
it's
game.
It's still Spoelstra, though.
Sacramento.
Like it's still Spoelstra, and they have 11 guys potentially? I mean, like we'll 3 of them, we have no idea who they are. Yeah, you're right. We will get that.
But yeah, I'm with you. Scotty Barnes just feels like very, very safe with easy, I think, triple-double upside in this matchup. Like you said, he's performed well against them. He does seem like a guy who kind of in these open floor type games, not a ton of defense from Indiana. He seems like he's very, very likely to get there, right? The only real thing I'd be worried about with Barnes, Mangone, is Indiana maybe could run Toronto off the court, right? They are a team that can get really, really hot, but on a 4-game slate, you can't really worry about something like that. The spread's obviously relatively close. So I like Barnes. I would rank him 1, Quickley 2, I think, and then RJ Barrett 3. But I like all 3 guys. I think they can get there together. And then on the Indiana side, I talk about this a lot, but if you're playing Halliburton, he's a fun guy to play with a couple of his 3-point shooting teammates because he does so much damage passing the ball that you can kind of really rack up points in a hurry, pairing up Halliburton with his teammates and get those assists to 3-pointers is a good way to find, I think, some sneaky correlation. What's your thoughts here, Mangone, on Toronto and Indiana?
Yeah, this is probably the best. I don't know if it's the best game on the slate. You could argue the Kings Heat game is, but it's one of the better games to target on the slate. We can kick it off with the Indiana side. So I don't want to play too many options in this game. I kind of agree with you. It's like Halliburton is clearly one of the best plays on the Indiana side of the ball. Of course, he costs money, but also to be fair, how many spends do we truly have on this slate that we absolutely love, right? There's not it's not a slate where there's Luka and Jokic and AD and Giannis. It's just not that slate. So Halliburton is very accessible if you want to go get him. So, and we have the value to do it as well. So like Halliburton, Miles Turner is the tough one. I think he's going to get some ownership, and I don't know what to do with him because I think even at his ownership, he could be kind of a play that could underwhelm in this spot. That would not surprise me at all. So he's someone I'm trying to think on. I also don't really want to spend that much on Pascal Siakam, and there's other spends I'd rather get to, like Scotty Barnes on the opposite side, who I'll get to shortly. And I definitely agree with you on maybe liking guys like Benedict Mathurin and some of these other ancillary pieces to pair up with Halliburton. I kind of agree with what you're saying with that there, DC. the Toronto side of the ball, that's the side you really like. That is the better side in this game. And I really like Scotty Barnes. I think Scotty Barnes is a phenomenal play that you can get to. I think RJ Barrett, solid play. I'm not worried about a minutes limit. Emmanuel quickly, even Bruce Brown for cheap. I don't mind him here. It is a pretty good Bruce Brown type of spot. Like, you want Bruce Brown in those games where, yeah, we don't know what the minutes are going to be like, but this is the game environment that if he got minutes, then he would probably crush, because it's a very up and down, going up the court, rebounds, easily accessible in transition. Like, this just game environment just screams a Bruce Brown game. The question is, will the minutes be there? That is the key. Some games you've seen 20, other ones you've seen 32. So just understand that there's a wide range of outcome for those minutes. And the Pacers are not great against big men. And Jakob Poeltl is a guy that I think you want to play here. I think Jakob Poeltl is getting overlooked. You could argue he's kind of similar plays, point per dollar wise, to guys like Quickly and Barrett, who I think are getting more ownership. And I think Poeltl's a really good play. So he's someone that I really like. I'd probably listed as Barnes, and then I'd say it's probably like, I think Poeltl, Quickly, and Barrett are all really close, but I might put Poeltl just a little bit above. And Bruce Brown's probably like number 5 on the list, just because of the volatility in minutes. And I know, Kevin, my Matherin, however you say it, I don't want to.
I love that you said Poeltl 2 different ways.
It's
Poeltl and Poeltl, baby.
Yeah,
oh, I love it, man. Go.
I think I hear them like all the different ways, so I just say them all. I'm just covering the basis there on that. But
I mean, have you ever done a golf show with our guy Snyder? We love Snyder, but have you ever done a golf show with Snyder?
Yeah,
I think he got you in the name pronunciation department.
The Brooks Koepka one killed me, or Koepka or whatever he would call him. He called him
Kopecky.
Yeah, that's what he would call it. It's just
so there's a guy with the name Duffy, and it's spelled like DAFFUE or something like that. He calls him Dafu every time. Dafu. That's my favorite one.
Sometimes on the MMA show, which I usually host, on like the Abu Dhabi cards where all the names are Pakistan, Russian names, I'll try to like split the difference, right? I know it's like not either of these, but like you just kind of like try to like fudge the middle of it to get through, so it doesn't sound quite as bad. I feel like that's you and Jakob Poeltl, I think is how you say it, Mangone.
Yes.
You just
tomato, baby. I like that.
Yeah.
You're right half the time.
But yeah, I do think he's a really good play, DC. Like I think this game's good. And it's one you want to get exposure to, but keep in mind, I mean, I know we have late swap today, but like if you play a lot of these guys, like, you do lose your flexibility for later on a little bit. So it's something you have to think about. Like, I know we talked about this with the slate recently with Big T, maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, but like, if you play 4 or 5 guys early, you don't have as much pivoting as you actually think sometimes. So just something to call out.
That's a good point. And one thing I've been trying to do, it's like have just like a modest amount of exposure to like the first game of the night here, because it does, I think, kind of help you inform the decisions for the rest of your roster as the night unfolds. If you're not, you don't want to be overexposed, because then you can't really do anything about it anyway. But if you don't have anybody, right, you don't get any information about how your lineup's doing, But if you have 1 or 2 or 3 players from the early game, you see, how chalky they are, how they're performing. And depending on how your night gets started, I do think you can kind of get a little bit of an advantage swapping accordingly, right? Based on you just get a little bit of information. I think that is at least helpful to me. So that's Toronto, Indiana. Certainly a good game to start us off. The next one, I think less so. Detroit and the New York Knicks. The Knicks favored by 11 here. A pretty low total, 223, although pretty much tied for the second highest total of the night. It's a low total night for sure in the NBA. OG Anunoby and Julius Randle remain out for the Knicks. And then Marcus Passer and Isaiah Stewart are out for the Pistons. Oh, man. Detroit, Mangone, I don't know. Like, this team is just so frustrating to play. The rotations, Monty Williams, in my opinion, really doesn't know what he's doing. But, you can't overlook him entirely, obviously, on a 4-game slate. And then the Knicks, even with OG and Julius out, they're kind of ticking along. We've seen Jalen Brunson, who's been really consistent all year, but now it's, 45, 50 seemingly every night. You got to imagine he's going to have a big game here. I think DiVincenzo and Josh Hart are in the discussion. And then the guy I'm really curious about, to get your opinion, is Hartenstein, who has an amazing matchup here, but has kind of been dealing with that injury, right? A little bit. I think it's like Achilles tendonitis. If I knew he was going to get full minutes, I'd be very interested in Hartenstein. We'll start with you, Mangone, on this one. Knicks and Pistons. What do you see?
Yeah, so one thing I've actually started doing, and I definitely did it yesterday too, was like some of these teams, like I talked about it on the show yesterday, the Jazz and the Spurs. I said, we're getting a lot of them. And you know what? I'm just not buying this shit, right? Like it's too many. They have good prices, but I don't trust the coaches in some of the rotations that I'm seeing. I think there's really good price tags, but I just can't buy it. And I feel similar in that way a little bit when it comes to this team. If you look at the Pistons, and we'll just look kind of individually at some of these plays, like Cade Cunningham, him an 8K, it's a solid price. It's fine. He's a good play overall, has a ceiling. Sure. Jaden Ivey at 6K. There's certainly upside there. I think he's a pretty solid play. I think you can make a case that Jalen Duren at 6'8", that's a pretty good spot, right? I don't think that's bad at all. I know it's a Quentin Grimes revenge game at 3'6". I think he'll pop a little bit. And I think Fournier at 3'8" will pop slightly as a value. Some of these Miami Heat will pop more, but these guys are popping a little bit based on their price. Fatachio, like all these guys have these price tags that I think you can get baited into. Don't play too many of them. I think you really have to be cautious of how many you play, where I might set a rule where it's max 1 or max 2 of the Pistons. Now, I typically like to run it and see what my teams look like from there before. Maybe I don't even have to put that rule in, but it's something that I just think you have to think a little bit about, because you can make a case that at 5,300, Oscar Thompson, if you knew he was playing 35 minutes like he did against Indy, I would be interested. But then there's the route where Orlando, he plays 21 minutes. And dude, it's just, you got to be careful with the Pistons. I think there are some really good price tags. If I had to kind of rank them based on the price, I think my ranking ceiling-wise would be Jalen Duren number 1. I think if this game is a close competitive game, Jalen Duren probably nukes at 6'8". He has a pretty big game, has 40 or more DK points. Then I'd probably list it Ivy. Ivy I might put third to Cade Cunningham just because Cade seems a little bit safer. Ivy feels like he's probably number 3, mainly because the floor could just be really bad for someone like Jaden Ivey. Then I'd probably maybe start putting Grimes up there. I think Grimes is a really nice value at 3,600. Now, obviously, he's not as good as DeLon Wright and some of these other Heat values that we're going to have, but I think he's a good value that's in play. And you can make a case for Fontecchio. I do have an under on Fontecchio. He was one of the bets I gave out today on Twitter. I think it's 12.5 points. I'll double check just to make sure I don't give out the wrong number. But the reason why is I just think the number is overinflated for what he's been doing. And yeah, it's 12.5 points. So overall, though, there's good plays on the Pistons side, but like I think you want to be very careful. You do not want to play too many of these guys, and I think you can get yourself in trouble sometimes with that. So I might raise the projections of some of these like guys and also put in a max 1 of 2 of some of these Pistons. And then the Knicks side of the ball, man, Prestichu is 7K. I know he's been solid, but I don't know if I can do that price tag. It is the Detroit Pistons, so you can make a good argument for that, but it's definitely a tough pill to swallow there. Jalen Brunson, 9.7. I think he's a really good spend on this slate. He's definitely someone that I'm interested in. It is the Alec Burks and Bogdanovich revenge games, but I don't know, at like 4.7, Alec Burks off the bench, I'm not dying to get to. And Bogdanovich, it seems like they're a little more cautious with him and his minutes. So I don't know. The Knicks just seem a little overpriced for the most part. I would say Brunson seems like he's a great spend, but overall, when you look at Hart and Hartenstein and all these options, I'm just not excited to play many of these Knicks options. I think it's hard to get to them, and I don't see myself having more than 2 Knicks on a team. It might just only be 1.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning, the more we talk about this game and just the last few Pistons games I've watched, they're just so bad, AP. Like their offense, their coaching, and I think going into New York, I could see this game blowing out in a hurry. I think New York's offense won't have any trouble scoring, and I think Detroit's really, really going to struggle offensively in this one. They just have no spacing, right? Like it's It's ridiculous. Oscar Thompson's the worst corner three-point shooter in the entire league. Jalen Duren can't shoot from deep, and it just gets bogged down. I think this one could get ugly for Detroit. But what are your thoughts here, AP, on the Knicks and the Pistons?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I disagree with that Detroit does. I mean, the fact that they're not like one of Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham should be on the court at all time. And it blows my mind that their rotation is almost identical. And it's like they have no other ball handling outside of that. It's like it should be one of those. I get everyone wants to start and benching a player. I mean, look what it did to Jordan Poole. Monster game yesterday. Sometimes benching a player, bringing them off the bench motivates them. You know what I mean? What were you going to say, DC?
It's just their coaching is like so obviously bad that they're just a team that I want to continue to bet against, to fade, to think because they're making such horrible decisions to us who we're not basketball coaches, you know what I mean? Like we're just, in the grand scheme of things, like kind of casual basketball fans, really.
Yeah.
But they're doing things that are so bad, even to us, that how bad must the coaching be other than that? You know what I mean? And so it's just
that's a good.
There's a reason that they lose every game, right?
Yeah, and that's
the other problem. The other problem. Let me ask you this, AP. What you think about this? I feel like personally in the industry, a lot of these teams, like the Portland Trailblazers, great example. Everyone is building median projections minutes wise, like the game doesn't have more of a chance to blow out. Like I think if there's a chance a game could blow out higher, you should build the median minutes down. I don't know. I think everyone just assumes the median minutes are the same for every single team, and they're not, because some teams just are idiots, and the Pistons are one of those teams. I don't know how you feel about that, AP, but I definitely make adjustments for that on my own. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point. Another point, too, to bring up is just look at the pace of this team. So, like, one thing about the Knicks right now, I mean, just go and look it up. Like, I had to look this up, and I'm like, that can't be real. Like, last 3 games, 91 possessions per game for New York. Last game they played 85 possessions in today's NBA, where every other team averages like 103 or more possessions per game. So like the pace that they're playing at is so slow. They get this half court isolation type of ball where the ball's in Jalen Brunson's hand. And look,
Brunson backing people down and just
and it works. It works for them because they play defensive basketball as well. But from a DFS standpoint, it limits opportunities, which is just massive. And it's not like we're getting a discount on the New York Knicks from a pricing standpoint. Dante DiVincenzo, 7,100. I mean, even like I like Jalen Brunson tonight. Look, I think he's a great tournament play. He's 9,700. If I was playing one lineup, I'm going to play Brunson. But if I'm playing one lineup, I have no idea how I play him over like Halliburton tonight, who's 9,500. Yeah, Halliburton might play more minutes, but I bet he plays more possessions if you look at it from that standpoint because they play with such pace. So the opportunity is just so much greater. The other thing, too, just a couple other notes on the Pistons. So Monty, he came out a few games ago and he's like, I'm not going to switch up the rotations. We're not going to experiment with these different matchups. And the very next game, he went right back to that. But I will say, the rotation looked a little bit better this last game, so maybe it's one of those things where it just takes a little bit of time. But he praised their defense, too. In the second half, he was praising them. He's like, we only limited the Orlando Magic to 48 points. Like, it's a Magic. They play with very slow as well. So it tells me a couple things. Like, this Pistons team, they're fine playing at the pace of whoever they're playing, is what it seems like. That's what I saw. Short sample, obviously, and it was against the Orlando Magic. But I think New York dictates the pace. I think a blowout here is very real. I don't trust this Pistons team at all. The other main thing that I think is important is Quentin Grimes' rotation. Like, is that a real thing? Oscar Thompson was in constant foul trouble. He had his, I think, 5th foul early, right away in the third quarter, which led to Quentin Grimes getting like 28 minutes or 26 minutes. So is that real? And then the other thing is, like, I've seen Evan Fournier mentioned like 9 times, 10 times in chat. He wasn't on my radar. So, like, maybe revenge. Maybe it's just we're bored on a 4-game slate. But are we really digging that deep when we have a 3K potential starter and a guy I hate, a guy I've trashed all season long when he was with the Wizards? Like, the guy I think is one of the worst basketball players in the league, but he's 3K in the Miami. They have no point guards, so he's going to be forced into a big role. Like, why are we talking about like Evan Fournier when we have other value that's just going to be so much better? So outside of that, like my summed up here is I'm going to try to be underweight on this game, which I think aligns with you guys. I like Josh Hart, I like Jalen Brunson, but Hartenstein, no. Like Precious, no. Going to be a lot of fades for me in this game.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more I think I'm kind of leaning in toward what was my original plan. Is to punt this game and treat it as a 3-game slate, because if this game does blow out, I think there's a chance, Mangone, that almost everybody busts. I mean, the total's already really low to begin with. The Knicks guys, right, are really expensive. If they miss that last rotation, they're probably not going to get there. Brunson at 9,700, DiVincenzo at 7K, Precious at 7K, right? Like, they've got to do some serious damage. And then Detroit is the worst team in the league and also one of the least reliable in terms of minutes. So I don't think it's a stretch to see this game just kind of busting out entirely. And listen, that's not a bold statement on an 8 or 10 game slate. But if you can pick out the one game on a 4-game slate where everybody ends up with snowflakes at the end of the night, like, that's a big advantage to nail your player pool effectively down by roughly 25%. So that's probably the approach I'm going to take to Detroit, New York, and just hope it all busts out. New York limits the Detroit offense, slow scoring, all that good stuff, which, frankly, all that stuff, all those, individual aspects sound somewhat likely to me. So that's probably going to be my approach to the Knicks and the Pistons. We'll move on to the next game on the slate, Brooklyn and the Memphis Grizzlies. This one, another really low total, sitting around 215. So even lower than Detroit and the New York Knicks. Brooklyn is favored by 2 here. We do know John Conchar is out for Memphis, who's obviously lost a ton of players this year, mostly in the backcourt. And then Ben Simmons is the only question mark for the Brooklyn Nets right now. He's questionable to play, but just with the he's always injured. Ben Simmons questionable, no surprise there. Memphis, though, Mangone, another one of those teams where I try to be under on them if I can. This seems like a reasonable spot to do so. Again, obviously, you got to roster someone, but we're going to get to Miami, which I'm going to have a lot of Miami, which means hopefully less of Memphis and to a less extent Brooklyn. Talk to us, Mangone, Nets and Grizzlies.
Yeah, I mean, to kick this slate off, I agree with freeing Pac-Man Jones in the chat. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in a great spot today. And I think he's going to get a little overlooked, I think, on this slate. And, I mean, how overlooked can you get on a 4-gamer? But overlooked enough. I think his upside is really good, especially if it's a competitive game. To be fair, though, this game's not competitive. Like, does Jaren Jackson Jr. play that fourth quarter run? No, probably not, right? It's just an ugly game. And, I mean, you could definitely see that with Memphis, but I think both these teams are kind of a mess where I think this game will still stay decently close. I like Jaren Jackson Jr.'s upside. Definitely worth rostering, in my opinion. I think Vince Williams, he's probably a secondary ball handler that you want to definitely look at. Zaire Williams, his price has gone up to $4,700, and there's upside at the price, but I just be a little cautious with him if he had too much ownership, but I don't think it'll be too much. Then you got Gregory Jackson off the bench, who's been pretty good. I'd be curious what his ownership is. Let me find it on Saverson, just because I think he's definitely someone like very points dependent. You need to know what that ownership is going to be. And it's around like 17%. He's okay, but I don't know. I don't want to get to too many Grizzlies, right? This is another spot where I kind of want to limit some of these guys a little bit, just because you could easily see Gregory Jackson replace like a Zaire Williams. Like, maybe making a rule of like those two guys isn't the craziest idea, honestly, like this. The net side of the ball, that's another tough one, just because the Nets, man, they have had some weird rotations. Obviously, Ben Simmons, I think he is questionable. I don't think we have his status yet. Ben Simmons has been starting, so I think if Ben Simmons did miss, someone else could emerge as a starter that would pop up as a value. The question is, who would that guy be? It could be like a Dennis Schroeder, a Lonnie Walker. I don't know which route they're going to go, but that could be a piece of news that comes that we need to, like, obviously, talk about. We'll be in the Discord chat talking about that. I'm sure it won't come while we're on the show, but it's just something to note that if he misses, I think that would give a slight boost to a Brooklyn option or two. As you look at the rest of the Brooklyn plays, like Mikal Bridges feels cheap at 7,200. I'm not dying to get there. I think there's better studs. I just talked about Jaren Jackson. I liked other guys in this other games before that we talked about as studs. So I just don't think Mikal's the greatest stud option on a slate like this. I think it's really looking at some of these bench pieces that could thrive if a Ben Simmons is out. So that's really where I'm at. But again, I want to be kind of low on this Brooklyn side too. It's hard to get to them. And Memphis, I just want to be a little bit cautious. I don't think you want to play like Gregory Jackson and like Zaire Williams together, or maybe I don't know if I want to play 3 Memphis guys. I think 2 isn't a bad number to experiment with. And I get it. There's a lot of chalk coming up in this next game and that earlier game, but I definitely want to eat a lot of this chalk today, but I want to be smart about how I play these other plays, because I feel like that's where a lot of people are going to make mistakes. I think they're going to play too many of these guys on like a 4-game slate and too many of these options that are just on bad teams with terrible rotation. So that's how I'm attacking the slate. And I think you just want to be cautious with who and how you play these Memphis options and the Brooklyn plays.
Yeah, that all makes sense. The one thing I'd say about, kind of in contrast to Detroit AP, Memphis coaching staff does at least seem to have an idea of what they need to use the second half of the year, right? It's a lost season for them, but like they're letting, 2 guys who, have a bright future, or at least they need to find out. Vince Williams Jr. is getting 36 minutes, 36 minutes pretty much every night, regardless of score. And then it seems to me Gregory Jackson is the other guy that they're pretty convinced they need to evaluate. He's going to get his minutes. He's kind of blowout proof. He's been really, really high usage over these last couple of weeks. I feel good about his minutes, especially at 4,900. So I do like those 2. Obviously, Jaren Jackson Jr. is in play. I think those 3 are kind of the big 3 for Memphis right now. The guys that they're going to lean on, give most of the minutes an opportunity to. So I don't mind them. And then Brooklyn, like Mangone said, kind of a mess, a team that I don't love tonight. What are your thoughts here, AP, on this game?
It is really crazy. Like this Memphis team, they've literally lost over half their team, it seems like. I mean, more like 4 key starters, like Desmond Bain, Ja, Marcus Smart, trying to
those 4.
Well, am I missing? Yeah, but like they've had no one, and they're kind of salvaging their season just by getting some massive like wins. Like obviously the win over the Bucks. Before that, they beat the Rockets, and they've been competitive. They were very competitive against the Clippers on the 23rd, just a few days ago, 101-95. And you gotta love what. So I'm fully on board with Jaren Jackson Jr. Like I know the one risk is they are in development mode. So like, what do I mean by that? If the game gets out of hand, they don't need to extend Jaren Jackson. And they also like Gigi Jackson, off the bench. But I still think Jaren Jackson Jr. gets, his 32 to 35 minutes, maybe on the, 35 plus side if the game stays close, kind of like what we've seen. And his usage is just insane, like 40% plus. Like the opportunity is absolutely nuts. And then add in like a matchup. This matchup, in my opinion, is just so good for a guy like Jaren Jackson. We've seen bigs like him absolutely smash against this, smaller Nets team, to be honest. Just the ability to rack up, steals, blocks, putbacks, and then, offensively, what Jaren Jackson's doing too. So the other part of this lineup, so Vince Williams has been awesome. I don't trust Luke Kennard, raw scoring dependent, not a traditional point guard on this team. From an offensive standpoint, it's more Vince Williams and Jaren Jackson, a little bit of Zaire Williams too. And then Gigi Jackson off the bench. Lamar Stevens was fine last game at 4,100 though. I don't really want to go and chase that. So the guys I'm lower on here, Luke Kennard and then Santi Aldama. I like Santi, but when he's paired with Jaren Jackson, it's like he would be so much better coming off the bench from a fantasy standpoint. But when he's on the court sharing time with Jaren Jackson, it's like he's got to be highly efficient to get there. The opportunity is just so limited because Jaren Jackson's doing so much. However, I do like Gigi Jackson, Gregory Jackson coming off the bench, 4,900. I think he's a sneaky value to play in this spot. And then on the Nets side, so like my read on the Nets. So they've had a pretty tough go. So they got destroyed by Boston. Embarrassing. Let their coach go, 50-point loss. And then you play a Raptors team that's starting to build some chemistry. And then you got to go and play the Timberwolves, which, man, like this Wolves team, just insanely good defensively, had their number. It did stay close a little bit towards the end. I think this is a spot where the Nets have to they need to get a win. And if they can't beat this Grizzlies team, man, it's going to be really bad for this Nets team. So I actually like, despite the low total, I actually have a lot of interest in this game. Cam Thomas, I think, is really sneaky. 6,800. He's going to play a ton of minutes. He already is. The matchup, like when you look at it attacking-wise, we don't want to really attack Jaren Jackson, good rim protector, awesome defensively. I would rather attack this backcourt. Young backcourt. You got Luke Kennard. You got Vince Williams kind of finding his way. I think it's the perfect spot for Cam Thomas to just quietly put up like 30-plus real points, maybe get some peripheral stats, put up like a 43 piece at 6,800, I think would be very viable in tournaments. And then Bridges, obviously 7,200, he's fine as well. And then Nick Claxton is okay. Those would be the main guy. I'm not playing like Ben Simmons. Dorian Finney-Smith is just 3,900. He just always feels trappy to me. I want to play Cameron Johnson, but man, coming off the bench, they're not giving him a ton of minutes. If I knew he was going to play like 25 to 27 minutes, I would consider him at 5K, but it's just very difficult to trust. So for me, it's sticking to the main pieces here. And honestly, my favorite two plays are Cam Thomas on the Nets and then Jaren Jackson for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, there's just a big difference, I think, between like where the Nets are, right? Like they've been mostly healthy and just haven't had a terribly disappointing year. Where the Grizzlies are, where they lost all their, 4 or 5 of their best players, but now a couple of young guys who, weren't really involved all that much or weren't planning to be in Vince Williams and Gregory Jackson are getting a chance. So I think those two guys in particular are going to be guys you want to play down the stretch here at NBA because I think they're going to continue to get minutes. And I'll lean on the younger guys for Memphis, both in this game and kind of as much as I can going forward. I think they're in a kind of just figuring out where they're at, and those two I think are kind of the big two key pieces for that. So that's Brooklyn and Memphis. I do think Memphis wins this game. By the way, they're 2-point underdogs, but give me that Memphis money line in this one. Let's get to the last game of the night. Before we do, please hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. Does allow us to bring you guys this show free of charge each and every day. And if you do want to join Run Pure Sports, we do have a promo code right now, RPS15 for 15% off your first monthly or weekly payment. All right, last game of the night. Certainly an interesting one. We've talked a little bit about it in passing as we've gone through this slate. Miami at Sacramento. The Kings here, 7-point favorites, 224 total. The Kings side is pretty much status quo. They should be more or less fully healthy for this game. Very, very different story on the Miami side. They will be without Tyler Hero, without Terry Rozier, without Jimmy Butler, without Josh Richardson, without Nikola Jovic. I think that Thomas Bryant is also out, and then Orlando Robinson questionable. It is the backcourt of Miami that I think is the most interesting, down to really just the 2 point guards. One is DeLon Wright, who he just signed not that long ago with the Heat. Has he played yet? Doesn't look like it for the Heat. And then the G League rookie, I think he's 25 or 26, Alondas Williams, I think he's going to be the other option at point guard. Man, AP, there's not a lot left here. If you look at where the Heat does have some depth, it's guys like, Kane, Highsmith. They've got, enough centers. But, man, they're really, really thin in the backcourt. and very, very cheap as well. Both those point guards for the Heat that are left are both 3K. Looks like DeLon Wright might be among, if not the most popular plays tonight, which I think makes sense. But obviously, kind of an all hands on deck to some degree situation here, and against Sacramento. Thoughts on Miami and Sacramento here?
Yeah, so DeLon Wright, kind of the obvious chalk piece. You're seeing it in projections already. Massive ownership on him as well, and obviously massive ownership too on multiple pieces here from Miami. Just somewhat limited. I mean, they still got 10 active, and then one more guy is questionable. But a few of those pieces are just pieces that G League prospects basically. I mean, even if I pull it up, it's like most of these guys we don't even know. I mean, you got Jamal Cain, like Aldonis Williams. I mean, we don't know these guys, so we know what this rotation is going to look like. The thing I struggle with is, and I'm serious when I say this, like DeLon Wright's just been like bad. I mean, he was on the Wizards, and it's like when you're bad on that team, it just says something because that's a really bad basketball team. In my fear with I'm not locking him. There are times where I will just lock in a 3K punt value. Am I saying I'm gonna fade him? No, definitely not fading him. But you can make a strong case to be like slightly under the field on him, and you're still gonna hit the various combinations that you want to hit. Versus like in these spots, sometimes in the past I would just lock him. Like Jordan Noir is a good example. Obviously a different example, but he definitely is a good example. And the reason why, like, how does he fail? I think there's a few paths that are reasonable to discuss. Like if he gets us like 23 or 24 DraftKings points, would that be a failure in large field tournaments? I honestly think you need more than that. In that $4 100K up top, like I think if he gets you that, and if your studs, which we lack on this slate, aren't hitting the 60 pluses, that mid-tier build and the upper mid-tier build is going to be very, very attractive. And if a DeLon Wright gets you like 20 to like 25, there's going to be paths out there where you're just not going to be able to keep up. So that's one, why I'm not locking him. Two, what's his role going to look like? We've seen like Spoelstra can do crazy things with these rotations. Mm-hmm. You could see like Jaime Jaquez run the offense. We saw that like on Christmas. He had a 50 piece. We also saw that in a game, like he came off the bench against Charlotte.
Just real quick, AP, Spoelstra is not the type of coach just to be like, oh, you're the starting point guard, you get to run the offense now. No, that's not
right.
I don't really think that's how this is going to go down. Like I think DeLon Wright is going to have the ball in his hands less often than maybe people think.
Yeah, 100%. I think you could see Point Bam out of bio. Yeah. Like we've seen that before. He can run an offense. Jaime Jaquez too, even like a Duncan Robinson. Those are the guys I trust. I trust Caleb Martin from a minute standpoint, and they love Haywood Highsmith. And then Kevin Love likely to get his 20 to 25 minutes off the bench. And then you have all these other pieces. Like, yeah, DeLon Wright is the obvious most likely starter. I'd be very surprised if he didn't start. But that doesn't mean like his role here is guaranteed, where we know what we're getting with Jaime Jaquez. We know they love Haywood Highsmith. And we know Caleb Martin, that glue guy, he's going to be in there. Now he's 5,700. Like, I don't know if it's like I trust on the DFS standpoint. I know offensively, Duncan Robinson's the guy. I know Jaime Jaquez from minute standpoint, peripheral stats in this situation, he's going to get run. And we know Bam has to, do his thing. And the other thing too is the Kings are coming off a monster win last night. Sabonis was awesome. It's just that standard like letdown spot. And Spoelstra finds ways to get his guys to be competitive. It's absolutely insane. So you want pieces from this game. I'm just like not convinced that you'd lock DeLon Wright. Now, again, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to talk him off DeLon Wright. I'm not. If you're playing cash, you lock him in. You'd be an idiot not to lock him in. I think even single entry, formats, you can definitely make that case. But look at the context of this slate. Jaime Jaquez is 5,600, Duncan Robinson 5,400, Mathurin 5,500. We talked about Pirtle 6,400, Jaren Jackson underpriced 7,900. This mid-tier range type of build is on paper very attractive. Keegan Murray on the other side of this game put up a 50 piece, like hit 10 3-point-9 or 10 3-pointers against the same Miami team, and that was down in South Beach too. So I really like the mid-tier setup, on this slate. I'm playing DeLon Wright. I think it's an interesting discussion point. He's going to be mega chalk on this slate. I might find myself slightly underweight relative to the field. Not fading them, just slightly underweight in favor of kind of this mid-tier build. On the Kings side, kind of wrap this up. So Sabonis has been a beast. It's in his price never changes. He's a triple-double machine. It's absolutely insane what he's doing. But this matchup is even for a guy like Jokic, who we all love, whenever he's playing Bam, Bam is just so good defensively, can take these type of guys, the Giannis's, the Sabonises, the Jokic one-on-one, and just really do his thing. And that's what allows, Miami and Spoelstra to be so competitive, defensively. I don't like this spot for Sabonis. I love it for Keegan Murray. I'm going right back to him. And then I love it for the backcourt. De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk is where I'm looking at there. So love this late game. Obviously, it's going to be chalk. I just laid out kind of my path and the route that I'm going here.
Yeah. The one guy you didn't mention, AP, and listen, this will be a leap of faith play for me, but one that I'm pretty sure I'm going to make tonight is Alondas Williams, who I think will be the backup point guard tonight. But honestly, I wouldn't be that shocked if he started. You can see this right on his. You can read the blurb. Anyone wondering, right on his player page. But they did give him the two-way contract. I think each team maybe gets one of those. I'm not quite sure the rules. A couple weeks ago, averaging 20.7 assists, 5 rebounds, something like that in big minutes over the G League. And my guess would be that the Heat run a lot of the same stuff with their G League squad that they do with their, their main NBA team to kind of try to prepare players for that. So I wouldn't be shocked if Alondas Williams knows the system better than DeLon Wright does, who's a recent signing. We know DeLon Wright is bad. The Heat had enough faith in him to give him this contract a couple weeks ago. And I've seen it projected for 11, 12 minutes across the industry, which I get it. He hasn't played really. What has he played? 6 total minutes in the NBA this year, so it's hard to project him for much. But if DeLon Wright sucks and this guy checks in for him a few minutes and finds some success, man, I think he could steal that role. And it is literally direct leverage off of a play in DeLon Wright that we know is going to be 80% owned. And we're not really comfortable with, I'm less comfortable with a DeLon Wright 80% owned than I am a typical player who reaches this level of ownership. So I don't know if you've considered Alondas Williams, Mangone, and this is one where I could be wrong, but I think I'm willing to go down with the ship just because of, if I'm right, the payoffs are great because of the ownership of the two and the direct leverage that I think Williams has against DeLon Wright. So that's kind of where I'm at. I know probably somewhat of a hot take there, but I'll stand by it. Mangone, your thoughts here on Heat and Sacramento?
Yeah, I have had so much time since AP talked to look up all the DeLon Wright information. So I did stumble upon Darrell Wright was his brother for the Heat a while back, and he's known Eric Spoelstra since he's 12. So I'm not too worried about him knowing the system and everything like that. I think he'll be fine. Also, I think DeLon Wright, I think the reason to maybe be concerned with him is I don't think his role is starting point guard. I think his role is defensive stopper, right? One of those guards that stops the guys on defense, lets other people ball handle, shoot those corner threes. I just don't think that exact role is the starting point guard. I think you're going to see Jaime Jaquez, right? You're going to see him. You're going to see him as the guy that could be the option. The one counter I'll say to your point on this Londis guy, DC, is I always like to look on the 10 days and see what their future schedule is. And I always like to see like what's at the end of the 10 days. And like they play Portland tomorrow. Then they play Denver at Denver, which like I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Heat guys sat at Denver just because it's Denver. And I know they had that fight with Jokic once, so I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of those guys just sat that game. Then they play Utah and Detroit. Like I just think there's other games to let Williams kind of cook and give him the opportunity. But to be fair, a lot of guys are out for this game. I think you could also see Eric Spoelstra play like Duncan Robinson could play at the 2 more the majority of the time tonight, right? Where that's going to steal guard minutes from DeLon Wright and some of these other guys in Williams. I don't know if I'm going to take the chance on it, but I understand the reasoning behind it. It's a 4-game slate, not a lot of ownership, could kind of fall his way into more minutes. Like I understand what you're trying to do there. I just think it's clearly I'd rather play like the guys that I know are going to play like 36 plus minutes, right? Like Caleb Martin, give me him. Give me.
I do like all those guys too, but then I like pairing them with the direct pivot from Wright to Williams.
I agree. I get what you're saying. What I'm just trying to get is I think I see this as if I was looking to maybe get off of DeLon Wright or like think about how can I play these Heat options. I really want to bump up the mid-tier guys. Like I want to bump up Duncan Robinson. I want to bump up Caleb Martin and Aquas. Like those are the three guys that I am looking at to be overweight on for sure. Kevin Love, he is a pretty good fantasy producer. It's tough for him and Bam to play together. So I don't think I'll get there as much. I'm sure I'll get a little bit because I'm playing that $4, but I think it's really those key 3 guys in the 5K range that I'm keying in on. I don't think it's a night to lock DeLon Wright. I know he's going to have high ownership. I might go even with the field. Maybe I'll play him at like 85 or so. I think that's where he'll be at. He'll be between 80 and 90, I think. But we also don't know if he's going to start. I think he does start. I think you could see what you said, DC. I think you could see Williams randomly have a spot start and have DeLon come off the bench. But then you could see DeLon close. There's a lot of different routes. I also want to mention this so people understand. Here's the situation. They have Bam Adebayo, Caleb Martin, Robinson, Jaime, Love, Wright, and Haywood Highsmith. Those are 7 guys that they for sure have. The other options that they have, Orlando Robinson, who's questionable with the back spasms, and they have 3 other guys on 2-way deals. Alondes Williams, Jamal Cain, and Cole Swider. So, like, it's definitely a thin situation. You want to play a bunch of these guys for sure. I think you can get away with playing 4 Heat. I don't want to play 5 Heat. If I do play 4 Heat, I'm sure DeLon Wright is part of the 4 that I am playing, and you're going to want to like these guys. I do like Bam Adebayo too. I think there's good opportunity for him against Sabonis. I think it's a pretty easy match for him, but I really want to key in on the mid-tier options and Martin, Robinson, and Jaime. Those are the 3 guys I'm for sure going to be overweight on. And then when it comes to the Kings, I mean, we talked about some spends we didn't like on this slate. Like, there's good spends here. Like, De'Aaron Fox at 8.3 is a really good price. I'm definitely going to consider him. I know he might get DeLon Wright on defense a little bit. DeLon Wright's good defensively, but it's still DeLon Wright, right? He's not this, amazing lockdown defender. I think Malik Monk, not a bad play. They're going to need him a little bit for sure. Don't hate the Evan Herter call. I think he's not a bad option. I don't mind what AP said with Keegan Murray. The key with Keegan Murray is he's just 5'1". Honestly, 5'1" is too cheap. The only issue is dude, like he is a low floor. Like the 15 is well within his outcome. I do think it's a solid spot for him. So I will definitely be overweight on Keegan Murray. And then Sabonis is 10-2. I think he's a little bit tougher to get to. I don't think as many people are getting to him on this slate. So if you want to play him as a contrarian tournament play, I don't mind it, but I prefer De'Aaron Fox to Sabonis for sure. So, yeah, I could see the Heat, like NJ saying in the chat, I could see them playing 8-man rotation. I could also see them not playing 8-man rotation. We'll have to see, but it's clear as day we want to play the Heat. And also, their starting lineup is not clear. I do think DeLon Wright starts, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's randomly not starting. I do think, though, this is a guy that I think they value after reading a lot of what I read. Like, they've been talking about getting him since early January when Udonis Haslem was talking with Spoelstra about it. He's literally known Eric Spoelstra since he's 12. I think they had an idea that we have a lot of ball handlers, right? What we need is we need a guard that can defend and fit this system well. Just like do the right things, make the right passes. I actually think he's a good just overall fit for this team for like the end of this season. But that doesn't mean that role is great, right? It's not, if he's not the ball handler tonight, yes, he's 3K, but I just wouldn't lock button him. Like, I would lean on just being even with the field. That's kind of how I'm leaning right now. And I might even go underweight. It sounds scary to go a little underweight on it, but I want to see what the other values I'm getting besides that. And maybe it's not doing that. Maybe it's just going more of a balanced build. Like, do we need a 3K DeLon Wright today, DC? I mean, we don't have Luka and Jokic to go grab. I don't know. I think a balanced build is a great way to avoid a DeLon Wright construction if you want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously going to be under on DeLon Wright. Sounds like you guys are maybe leaning in that direction. And yeah, absolutely, Williams could get a DNP here. There's no question about it. They don't absolutely have to play him. But that's why the projection sites can only project him for 8 or 10 or 12 minutes, and why he's going to be not owned at all unless he, gets the surprise start, which if that happens, I mean, I'm going to play him at 3K anyway. So it's just
here's a good question, DC. Sorry to cut you off, but what ownership would you want to be under at? Like, where's the ownership that you're like, man, that's way too high? I think it's like a really interesting debate on this.
Assuming nothing changes in terms of what we know between now and then, and it is DeLon Wright who starts, there's no big news that Williams is going to get minutes. I would be comfortable playing him anywhere under 10% owned in a large field GPP. And I don't think he'll get anywhere close to that if the news that we have stays the same. So it's, like everything in DFS and gambling, you're trying to take a calculated risk, right? And play the probabilities and get to the top of the tournament. And in my opinion, this is a decent one to take. All right, that's all 4 games. We'll do plays of the day at this point. You've had, I think, enough time to think over there, AP, so we'll throw it to you for the gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my Nets guy and Cam Thomas, 6,800, 4-game slate. I think he's going to go really overlooked. I like the price tag, like the matchup. He should cook. Again, he should absolutely eat. This is like the matchup against a G League-esque Grizzlies team where he should feast. So give me Cam Thomas, 30 real points or more tonight. That's where I'm going.
All right, I got to ride with them at this point, so I will go with my man Alondes Williams as my play of the day. Certainly not for the faint of heart. If you can't, if taking a 0 will ruin your life, then he is probably not the play for you. But someone that I do think is a plus EV roll of the dice tonight. Let's go to you, Mangone, your play of the day.
Yeah, coming off the Grayson Allen one that absolutely nuked, that was a really good one. Let's see if I can keep it rolling. Let's see. I don't totally agree with this ownership, but it's down enough that I think it's okay to give it. I don't think it's the highest owned guy. It's a heat option, so I am giving a heat play, but give me Mr. Jaime Jaquez, right? He's going to be the guy that I go to. I think he's probably the best heat option. I think he's a really strong play. So it's going to be him. He will be my play of the day. And I don't think he's going to be like as high. Like, obviously, DeLon Wright's going to gain ownership. I think Duncan Robinson's going to be higher. I still think we're getting too much of a discount on his ownership.
Yeah, I like that call. I like Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson. And I like playing the normal chalky guys and just making that one little pivot to get off the highest owned play of the slate to the low owned guy when there is, in my opinion, quite a bit of uncertainty surrounding the situation. But that will do it for this show. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Hit the like button on your way out if you haven't done so. We do have the Up to Lock show starting up pretty soon for the members. That'll do it. For AP, for Mangone, I'm DC. We'll check you next time.